Norman Lacey says it's waiting. Oh, it's happening. It's actually happening. We're on. It took 3 or 4 attempts to get this happening on YouTube, but we are live. So good morning and a semper paratus to you, good sir or madam, on this fine, rather chilly day where I am in the world. The first wintry breath has been blown across my lands, and it's a foretelling that the cold months are coming. And got down to 5 degrees overnight, so it wasn't too bad actually. But that's a what we would call a harbinger. If you think cold is doom. Laman's Grove. So for those who are listening to this on the podcast version, you wouldn't have heard this whole spiel. I've actually been doing this for this particular podcast for the last 5 minutes, and we haven't got YouTube to work, and it's just come on, so that's really good. But anyway, I asked the question, how prepared are you? How prepared are you right now? Give me a score out of 10. Lemons Grove Lemons Grove on Instagram says 5 out of 10. So yeah, halfway. That's I would say I'm probably about halfway, maybe 6. Sometimes a 7, but probably most of the time a 6. And one thing I always like to talk about when it comes to prepping is it's not a solid state. I don't see this thing as a solid state that you're like, bang, I'm here, I'm done. I see it as something that is ongoing, and quite often life gets in the way and I get distracted and things fall apart. Maybe certain food, like you might notice there's a lack of stuff at the moment, and I'm actually disappearing the office because we're packing to potentially move very soon. One of the things I've been doing is, my partner was actually doing, was sorting through the pantry. And there's a nice little pile of stuff that was all out of date and had gone bad, and it was kind of like caught up the back behind things. And this is it. Like, I sit there and look at the pantry and go, this is great. This is going to last me 3 months at least, the whole family. And then I look at it all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, there's things that I need to think about here. There are things that you forget about and you need to like get on top of. So preparedness is a process. It's a ongoing process. I don't ever believe you are prepared. That's it. Skills are the same. I tried to start a fire in what I would say is an easy way. Fire by friction, like hand. That's really hard. I just tried to do it with it was a wet day too, with a ferro rod, and man, I struggled. I was like, I haven't done this in like maybe a year, maybe a year and a half, maybe even longer. So yeah, it's always this ongoing process. You always need to update this. Spice Gal says 5 out of 10. Also says, if you're halfway, then I'm 2 out of 10. No, you are where you are. For everyone, it's different too. It's not like an arbitrary point. You can sit there and watch YouTube stuff and you go, oh, look how prepared this person is. But that person at the end of the day is not you. That's one thing I like to remind myself. Keeping up with the Joneses is a big thing, and it's a big thing even within the preparedness community. We always want to have the newest, best gear, or this sort of skill, or whatever it is, these sorts of guns, or whatever it might happen to be. But in reality, preparedness is a very personal thing. It's like grab bags. I put up a couple of videos on YouTube about grab bags. I'm a bit loath to do another one, but I will do another one soon because I'm constantly remaking them, and there's always new ideas. But I get a lot of good comments, but I'll invariably get comments like, "Oh, you wouldn't take this, or you'd die if you had that, or what about this, or blah blah blah." And even though I try and explain that, like, hey, this is for me, and if you're building a grab bag, then it should be for you, whatever your circumstances are. For some reason, that part of videos, that information, like, just gets blanked by certain people, and they're like, this has to work for me and for everyone. Why doesn't this work for everyone? You're shit. So yeah, good morning to everyone. Anyway, at least who, if you just jumped on, I'm just spinning my wheels, blabbing on. We're talking about preparedness. I asked the question, how prepared are you out of 10? We've been getting some fives, some sixes. I think that's a really good way to think about it. I mean, I always try and hold the mentality of every day is a school day to me. I'm never at 100%. I'm never finished with anything. So, especially when it comes to preps, there's always something else. And again, me packing up things and moving at the moment really makes me look at stuff and go like, whoa, I thought this was more prepared. I thought I was more prepared. Clearly not. There's always something else. All right, let's jump into it, shall we? So we're going to go through some stories as we normally do. This is the SitRep, the situation report, and we're going to have a look at this stuff and think about which way is the wind blowing in the world at the moment. How can we be more prepared? I think that's a pretty good thing to do. I reckon that's a pretty good thing. Good morning to everyone on YouTube, and yes, I can see your comments there. So everything's everything's okay. I don't know if you can't see the comments, but I can definitely see comments that are going up there. Peter Rouse said that's why God made Bic lighters. Certainly, so you don't have to sit there with a ferro rod, like making feather sticks and then trying to catch them on fire when it's wet. All right, let's jump into it with some interesting stuff here. This is the first one that I think I want to talk about, and I've lost it already. It's about gold standard. Two things coming out of the US at the moment. Gold standard. If you haven't heard me talk about finance and economy sort of stuff before, just a quick sort of thing. We used to have a gold standard. The money that we have today is a promissory note, or used to be a promissory note, saying like this, so we don't have to actually exchange that gold. That gold is in the bank. Here is the note for that gold. That's a bank note saying that this $1 is worth $1 worth of the gold that's in the bank. And we can just exchange that rather than go and pull the gold out, give it to you, blah, blah, blah. That's how money, as we know it, came about. We progressively de-linked from that, and then in 1971, totally de-linked from it. And then we were just like, fuck the gold. We'll just do it on the back of hopes, wishes, unicorn farts, skittles, and what the government tells us. Essentially, trusting government is what creates our current financial system, a fiat financial system, which, unless you've had your head on a rock, is in a state of collapse right now for a number of reasons. One of the big ones being inflation. One of the things that's gold is not really affected by is inflation. Doesn't really matter. So a lot of people are getting like all excited about silver and gold going up in price. Pump the brakes. I actually don't think gold and silver is going up in price per se. Like gold is worth what gold is. Gold is the actual standard. The problem is our money is being devalued. It's a really good indicator of how inflation is going and how devalued dollars are when we see the price increasing of gold, as an example, as one indicator. So that's what we're seeing at the moment. Gold is now over 3,000, I think, Australian dollars per ounce, and over 2020, I think, last time I checked, in US dollars. So that's kind of like, that's a big deal. There are these mental barriers within the market that stop things going over, and one of those was $2,000 US or Australian. Australian one's more fickle because it's linked to what the Australian dollar is doing to the US dollar as well. So there's another factor in there that's moving it around. Anyway, short story long, as I always like to do, the people who are into gold and silver have been saying quite a lot lately that, hey, you should be buying gold and silver. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think it's a worthwhile store of wealth. If you want to go down that path, you certainly don't have to. There are other ways to store your wealth and to look after your wealth, but it is one that interests me personally. One thing that they're starting to bandy around is this idea of, hey, we might have to go back to a gold standard. We might actually have to link our money back to gold because at the moment it's linked to nothing. It's kind of been the world power, I guess, of money has been seen as what we call the US petrodollar. And that is, at the moment, again, unless you had your head under a rock, is totally falling apart. It's breaking apart in front of our very eyes. Dollars are no longer forced to be used to buy petrol. So the petrodollar is dying. It has been stabbed through the stomach, and it's not one of those wounds on the side there that the hero can just go like, I can just walk this one off and hide it under their jacket for the rest of the movie. This one's like straight through the guts, where you're like, yeah, you're going to die soon. You better say your last words. That's what's happening. So yeah, the US petrodollars on the way out. US dollars as, and by extension of that, US dollars as the what would you call it? The standard currency. I'm blanking on the word for it right now. The reserve currency, which is like the high watermark or the benchmark that all other currencies work off. Well, that's also going to go because of this, unless they do something drastic. What I think, though, the governments will try and do, like, there's two paths as far as I see that can happen here. What's going to happen? Things are going to get bad. Things are going to get much worse than they are now in the financial world, which will ripple out into real life. But in the financial world, things are going to get much worse. Governments will really have two choices. We're at this fork in the road as far as I can see. One, they will go, okay, the money, people realize now that the money is not really there, that it's all fake. The banking system is all fake. It's all made up of ones and zeros. It's all just bullshit. And people, like before, had confidence in it. By the way, let's just take that word for a second, confidence. When people have confidence in something, they buy into it. That's where we get the word con from. Oh, it's a con job? Or it used to be called a confidence scam or a confidence job, in that people believe in it, so they buy into it, and then that person goes, yep, sweet, bang, gotcha. So the confidence within fiat currency is crumbling before our eyes, and we know that because we've seen these bank runs, we've seen these collapse, or we've seen the collapses of banks because of bank runs, because people are freaking out. They're trying to pull their fake money out because they can see that it's not just fake, but it's not even there in the bank. They don't have all the dollars that they say they have, because they're moving it around all the time and they're borrowing against it and doing other stuff, and lending it out, I should say. So what we're seeing now is that lack of confidence in it. If they want to restore confidence in it, a really good, easy way to do that would be let's just link it back to gold, because that's a real thing. It's a real thing, and it is limited in its amount. There's no magic store. We're not going to dig up a mountain tomorrow and triple the amount of gold in the world. That just cannot happen. I mean, all right, it probably could happen in some reality, but it's not going to happen. All right, the amount of gold we've got is pretty much the amount of gold we've got. We've had diminishing returns for mining gold for decades, and maybe even like 100 and something years now. So we're not going to, unless we find an asteroid fly past near us and we can get up there and mine it, and it's just packed full of gold, there's not going to be any more gold that's coming out of the ground. Well, there is more gold coming out of the ground, but it's very, very small amount. Not enough to water down the value of gold. So they can do that. However, the fact that there is very limited gold also means that they can't create a whole heap of money, and them creating money equals power and control. They control us through the monetary system. That's how they do it. That is 100% their control. And then if they limit the amount of money that they can put out into the system, then they are in effect limiting their power. They are putting their hands up and they're saying, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to make the dollar worth something, and we're going to have less control over your lives now. I can't think of an example when any government has ever done that. Any ruling class has ever done that, where they have voluntarily. There probably are a couple of examples out there, very small ones, but the vast majority have always sought more control and more power over its populace. So I cannot see now our, benevolent overlords all of a sudden coming out and saying, you know what, we've controlled you guys enough. We're going to put the power back into your hands by linking our money system back to gold, limiting the amount of money that's out in the system, and doing what we can with what we have, basically. All right, so good luck to you guys. And we're just going to shrink our governments progressively as we move forward. I can't see that happening. It would be a really smart, really easy way, because there is trust in gold, and there has been for as much recorded history as we have, everything that we've seen, there's always been gold as a backbone flowing throughout these any civilization. You pick any civilization, it's always been there. So what's the other option then? The other option is CBDCs. So they can go, all right, our money is already made up. It's not linked to anything. We can see this other stuff that's there that's linked to something else called blockchain, which can't, be messed with yet, but theoretically could be has the potential to be more messed with than the supply of gold. They can limit the supply of gold that's out there and then artificially increase the price. They can cap prices on gold and decrease the price, but they can't make more gold. They can't turn lead into gold. They've been trying for hundreds and hundreds of years to do that. Can't happen. So gold is gold, but can they mess with blockchain? No, definitely not at the moment. Could they in the future? Well, the way AI is going, I don't know, or AGI, I should say. Who knows? Who knows what potential is there in the future? But what they can do is create more blockchains. That's definite. So you can create more different currencies in the same model. I think that's pretty bad. The beauty about blockchain, and especially when you're talking about things like Bitcoin, is that overtly, from what we can see, it's not government controlled. The problem then with the CBDC is that it is government controlled. They 100% control that. They see every transaction. They know exactly what's going on. They can issue things out. They can even put limits on what those tokens are spent on. So this would go the exact opposite way, where if they were linked to gold, they would get less control. If they release CBDCs, much more control, almost infinite control over somebody's life. So that's the two choices they have. The problem is that, again, this one's linked to something that people trust and know and have known for thousands of years, gold, but is limited. This one, unlimited in theory, but is not linked to anything, nothing real. And in fact, you could even argue that, say, a widespread power event like a EMP event would evaporate that system, or at least we couldn't access that system. Most people couldn't access that system. So there's a lot of things to think about here. I think the government's probably going to go this way. However, there is actually some weird middle ground that's going on here, and this is the story that I'm going to start off with today. I know this was, what are we in, like 15 minutes into it, 17 minutes into it? I haven't even talked about a story yet. All right. Texas bill proposes state-issued gold-backed digital currency. So, interesting from a number of points here. Point first, all right, there is a state-issued currency. So, government-issued currency, not federal government. So, here's one point on this: state-issued. Texas as well, who's known for being quite a independent state as far as the United States of America go. They're looking at issuing their own state CBDC, essentially. I mean, it's not a central bank; it'd be a state bank. I don't know what it would be, but whatever their government is. But it is a CBDC. It's a central bank, not like the central bank of the US, just the central bank of Texas. So we'll just talk about that for a second. It is a digital currency, but it does have a link to gold. This is actually not new, by the way. There are already cryptocurrencies, I hate that term, but cryptocurrencies that are out there that are backed by gold and backed by silver. There's an Australian one that's out there. I kind of look at it. I've looked at it and gone like, oh, here we go. Here's a cryptocurrency that's backed by gold and silver. That's something I can get behind. And then I thought about it. I'm like, actually, what's the point? Why would I spend $1 on a silver cryptocurrency when I could spend $1 on silver and just buy the actual silver, or even in between those two, buy the electronic, as I call it, silver, which is silver that's stored in someone else's vault. or paper silver or something like that? Why would I go to the next level and get a digitized version of that? Because it's not actually gold or silver. It's several layers away from it. It's a cryptocurrency linked to gold or silver. And it goes up and down as gold and silver goes up and down. So I'm like, why not just own the fucking silver? Am I mad thinking that? Am I crazy? But that was my theory on it. Anyway, Texas is looking at that. They're looking at putting a bill up to see if it'll come through their government, and that could be something that they might do. There are a few other little things in there as well. I'm not going to jump too much in the story because I've got another side story on this one, but I just wanted to point out the importance that this is a Texas bill. All right, that for me is interesting. United States of America, we know that there is quite a pulling apart at the seams of the society within the US. Pax Americana is falling apart, and really nowhere is that more obvious than within its own borders right now. We're seeing the separation within the society, and this is another thing where we're starting to see these states that are like, I might go my own way. The interesting one thing that actually fascinates me and I actually really like about the US is the theoretical independence of its states. If you've been tracking this sort of stuff, and I haven't really talked about this a lot, but there always has been, but it seems to be more, and I don't know this for a fact, just anecdotally to me, it seems to be more of a contentious argument between federal and state-based governments now. Ever since the big sniffles came in 3 years ago, and some states were like, actually, we don't want to just do that, whatever you're saying, government, we want to do this. And there's this been legal actual battle that's been happening. And now we're seeing that being transferred from the big sniffles into the whole gender argument, where certain areas, certain individual organizations in certain states are saying, no, I don't want any of this. And then the government, higher up, the federal government, saying, no, you will have that. And they're duking it out in courts. There's toing and froing of decisions that are progressively getting higher and higher in the court system. So this is another thing that I'm looking at, where I'm like, Texas is going to issue its own money. In theory, that kind of happens anyway, but it doesn't. I mean, that's how the US system, monetary system, kind of came about anyway. Like, states would issue their own tokens originally. This is going back pre-United States. But that's kind of the system that it came up of anyway. And like I said, one of the things I think is very beautiful about the US is the ability, in theory at least, for the states to go their own way. It's something that is not really here in Australia. We don't even think of it as a possibility here in Australia a lot of the time. There are different laws within each state and territory in Australia, but a lot of Australians think of themselves as Australians, unless some rugby league or something's getting played. You don't really think, right, this is the line, I'm this person, you're that person over there. You're totally different. We do it in a joking kind of way, but it's not that different. Anyway, yeah, that's the first story. And coming on the back of this, here's another really interesting one. 3 grand old party representatives, for those who don't know, that's a Republican, introduced gold standard bill to stabilize dollar's value. So now we're looking at Congress. We're looking at 3 congressmen within the federal level. So this isn't state, this is federal now. They've come forward and they said, hey, we are going to introduce this bill. Here's an idea. We're going to bring back the gold standard. So yeah, now we're looking at it from a much higher point. This is fascinating for me, as I said, because I do think that good diversification of your wealth may want to include gold and silver, if you're in the position to do so. The really interesting thing behind this is I think for the layperson to look at that, you go like, oh, that's a brilliant idea. Why wouldn't you do it? Unintended consequences. I always talk about these unintended consequences. Right now, we seem to be rife with them. Like these government people come out and they say, we're just going to do this, or we'll do this, or I'm going to enforce this rule. Everyone has to think like this now. And then, oh, there's all these consequences from it. Oh, how could have we known? Well, we could kind of know, because every single time we've made a decision about anything, there has been unintended consequences. So you can, use that as a benchmark, at least, knowing there's going to be something that's going to go wrong here. But one of the things you really need to think about with this, I'm not trying to sell you gold. If you're in the position to buy some and you ask me, I would probably say, yeah, it would be a cool thing to hold, but it's totally up to you. Here's something to think about, though. Relative price of gold. Okay, so if this is a total hypothetical here, if the US government said, let's link our money back to gold, they would have to do it at a certain percentage. I don't think 1% would be enough. I personally think it would have to be somewhere in the ballpark of 10 to 15%. So they could still have a whole heap of money, but they'd have to have 10 to 15% of their net worth in gold. All right. So that means they have to have a whole lot of gold, like a shit ton of gold. Many, many metric shit tons of gold. But they don't. Which means there's another thing you can do. You can make the gold that you do have worth a whole heap more. And if you think about it, according to reporting of what the US government holds in gold and what the GDP, I guess, is at the moment, what they'd need to do to balance those two things out, then you look at gold and you go, okay, they'd need at least something like 5 times what they have, at least. Which, what will that do for the price of gold? Well, you can just carry that equation back over the other side, 5 times gold. So if gold is at 2,000 right now, it'd be 10,000 if they did this overnight, like literally overnight. They go, no, that's no longer worth 2,000. It's worth 10,000. They'd never do that, right? No, there are historical examples of when they've done this up and down with gold before. The last, probably most infamous one was during Roosevelt, where they did people often talk about they stole the gold off people. They made gold illegal and they took it off of everyone. That's not exactly what happened. They just bought it back and they set the price at what they bought it back at. So they put a cap and they said, right, gold is only worth this much now. And they bought up everyone's gold. And then when they had the gold, they went, okay, gold's now worth this much, and kind of screwed everyone over. But they had their reasons. They're at war. Yeah, so that's some interesting stuff that I think is coming out of the US at the moment as far as gold. The other side, the unintended or maybe known consequences, is how much gold Russia and China has. Because if they do this and they go, all right, we're saved, our gold's now worth 5 times what it was, China and Russia can go, cool, because our gold is also now worth 5 times it was. And you know what? We have much more than you do. So thank you for making us by far the richest countries in the world, US. Thank you. You've saved your economy temporarily, and you have now made us your overlords. So a lot of issues around this. It's not quite as clear cut. I think if you just read the story and were like, oh, cool, yep, gold's going to go up. It's not quite as clear cut as that. But anyway, in short, I think you still should own gold if you can. I have totally missed out on a lot of the comments. I'm just trying to keep up with comments here on YouTube, but something about crime here. Sounds like a lot of crime going on in Queensland. I haven't read anything specifically about that. Sydney is a nightmare up there with Auckland. I imagine you're talking about crime as well. And yes, the axe in the background looks badass, because it is. That'll probably be the last thing that I'll pull down. Yeah, so at the end of the day, do I think we should go back to a gold standard? Yes. I think gold is a form of money. that can be utilized if we do it smartly. However, I don't think they will, because it will definitely limit the power of the central bank and, through extension, the power of the dark side of government. All right, let's jump into some other stories, more doom and gloom. Let's talk about, where are we? China. I've lost my stories. I should have ordered them again. I had time. What China's been doing around Taiwan, I think this is geopolitical sort of stuff, but this is another warning sign to everyone. Get your house in order. Ragnarok, World War III, it's not getting further away. It's getting closer day by day, and there is nothing that I see in the news, or I shouldn't say nothing. There is extremely little that I'm seeing in the news that flies in the face of that we're going to step back from the brink. Everything that I'm seeing about Ukraine, everything that I'm seeing about China, Taiwan, everything that I'm seeing about North South Korea right now is pointing in one direction, and it's more war. So what's China been up to? Obviously in retaliation, as I was saying, to the president of Taiwan, not sure if that's the title, going over and visiting the US in the highest level visits that they've had thus far. China launched a exercise, show of strength, whatever you want to call it, where they essentially, well, it was rehearsals, I think they actually called it. They essentially encircled Taiwan. They had ships out there. They had carriers out there. They had 71 Chinese aircrafts, 9 vessels. 45 of the PLA aircraft had crossed the northern, central, and southern median lines of the Taiwan Strait and entered into their economic zone. So they very much put a signal out there to Taiwan and to the world that, look at what we can do. Then apparently they followed it up with a simulation of striking key targets. So some sort of display of firepower. They were exploding things through the use of missiles, not in Taiwan, but just saying like, hey, this is something we could do to Taiwan, and look how accurate they are, and look at the devastation that they do. They've been moving allegedly a lot of military equipment down and around the area on the coast, on China's coast, closest to Taiwan. So this is obviously increasing fears within a lot of people. And again, there is only one way that this goes. China doesn't do a display like this. They don't start setting themselves. They don't do things like start to call people into reserves and say, hey, we need you in down this area here, and expect that the Western forces, Taiwan and US, will just go like, oh, okay, well, yep, they showed us. We'll ease things off and back off for a minute. Western forces are going to look at that and go like, they are definitely preparing to attack. Let's ramp our game up here. Let's push into this a bit more. Let's start building up our forces here, which is exactly what's happening. And China's going to look at that and they're going to go, oh, see, now you guys are pushing back. Well, we'll have to demonstrate further and we'll push further. Like I said, this is only heading in one direction. More war. So I've said this before. I haven't personally done anything like this, but if you want to make money and you don't have worries about feeding the military industrial complex, then that would be a pretty smart place to be investing right now, I think. Feeding the military industrial complex, then that would be a pretty smart place to be investing right now, I think. Looking at your bigger like Raytheon or Gummins and Boeings and stuff like that, they'd be making money right now. And any company that's making munitions as well. Texas Governor Abbott has his own page on the WEF website. It's interesting. I wonder why. And I know there's good in this world. I agree with you. There is a lot of good in this world. And that's really what we're trying to harbor on channels like this, I think. At least I am, and I imagine you are too by jumping on this, because it's something I say all the time. It's like, I'm not trying to spread fear into the world. I'm trying to highlight what's going on in the world so that we can best prepare ourselves and we can be prepared, because I believe that prepared people are less dangerous. Just think about that for a second. Prepared people are less dangerous. And I know this from personal experience of being in war zones, of being in conflict zones, and being in places of economic collapse, of being in disaster zones. I see what happens when people are unprepared and they become dangerous. They are desperate, dangerous human beings. We, I hope, are fighting against that. And it doesn't matter if the question I asked at the start of today, out of 10, how prepared are you? It doesn't matter if you're at that 6, that 5 level. It doesn't matter if you're at that 2 level. As long as you're not at that 0 level. Every step that you can take that's going to take you further up towards 10, and I don't believe that 10 is really a realistic place to be, but it's a great target to aim for. Any step that you're taking towards that is going to make you more prepared. More prepared individual is an asset when things go wrong. Be an asset, not a liability. That's what this is all about. I'm not prepared, but I will be. It's good. I mean, if you missed it, what I was saying at the start, I'm not prepared. All right, I'm not prepared for the end of the world. Maybe in some circumstances, I might fare pretty well. In other circumstances, I might not. I don't know. But the point is that we're striving towards that. We're always striving towards that, and we're always updating our preps. We're always continuing to do that. So if you agree, hit like and subscribe. I always forget to say that sort of stuff. Why isn't my channel growing? Yeah, because I'm not really into growing the channel. I'm more into just getting the information out there. But I should be, because if I can grow the channel, it gets out to more people, right? And that's what we're all about. Bring people into our own personal, what would you call it? Mind virus of preparedness. Join our cult. Come, we have many things. Preparedness things. Yes, look at these nice things. Come join us. Don't you want to be one of the cool kids? Better than the other mind viruses that are out there right now. I'm not going to talk about that. It's about kids getting sick. Let's leave that one for today. There was another one. Air Force will allow more body fat for recruits as service struggles to find new airmen. Can they call them airmen at the moment? That's actually another story about that particular thing, what I just said, but I'm just not touching that today because it's just infuriating me. But this one infuriates me enough. Male recruits are now allowed to have up to 26% body fat, and women are allowed up to 36% body fat. This is for the US Air Force. Recruiting Service spokesman Leslie Brown confirmed on Tuesday. The previous was 20 and 28% respectively. So obviously, let's get more fatties in there. More fatties up in the planes, huh? They're flying around a plane, right? Not like they need to carry that body weight around. No, this is just I mean, there's issues with it. There's 100% issues with that that I take. I'm like, no, that's a terrible idea. Military forces, what is their job? Their job is to be exponents of violence, to be capable human beings at doing that. Are you not capable of doing that at 36% body fat? No, I think you're very capable of doing that. Though, having personally fought in combat, in war, my own personal experience of this is the fitter you are, the better you are at doing it and at personally staying alive. I can see issues around this. Not to mention the danger that it actually causes to others around you, because if you are then injured, somebody has to get you out of there. There's a world of difference between somebody who is at 20% body fat and somebody who's at 36% body fat, the weight that they're actually carrying. Although, if they are ultra fit, I guess they've got muscles. Muscle does way more than body fat. So it's also a consideration. But capability is what I'm talking about. There's a disruption in capability. What this actually signals to me, though, is more of the degradation of our society, that we're actually throwing our hands up in the air and going, okay, we're fat. We're all fat. Let's just roll with it. Let's just roll with it. Instead of pushing back, instead of hitting, let's pump the brakes a second here. All right. Do we need a fighting force? At this point in time, yes. Do they need to be capable? Yes. Have you watched any of the propaganda videos that China or Russia or North Korea put out? Are you seeing the level and the quality of their personal soldiers? I don't know what the quality of their combat skills are, but I can see the physicality that they demand from them. And what are we worried about? We're worried about gender diversity. We're worried about transgender issues in our military, and we're worried about getting enough people in. So we're going to allow people who are overweight, people who have or still do take drugs, and people who are criminals. And I have said this before, actually, don't think having criminals in military forces is a bad idea. I just don't think they should just be in the military force. I think maybe Foreign Legion style might be a better way to do it. Where are you getting your meat from? Concerned about mRNA injections into the livestock? I get my meat locally, or relatively locally. Got a local butcher here, but also local farmers who do raise livestock, and would, because it's illegal, they don't butcher the livestock and sell it to people. That would never happen. But yeah, I try and get it from there as much as possible. It's a concern, but honestly, I have seen this. I don't know. I haven't researched it. Is my point here? I need to see. I want to actually research some of the peer-reviewed journal articles on this. Have a look at some of the science on it, and what the transmission of said mRNA injections into livestock, which are then slaughtered and then consumed by humans, to see what that is. I think you can look at this sort of stuff and just go like, yep, that's bad. They're giving us injections, mRNA injections, by putting it in our food now. But I would just say, hey, let's pump the brakes on this. If somebody knows more than I do, which is probably everyone who's listening to this, please let me know. But or at least point me to some of the articles on this, because I haven't seen any yet. I want to go have a look at it, and I've only just heard 3 days ago that they're doing this. I know a dude in our Air Force, and he told me he trained up for once a year fitness assessment in the Air Force, so he is actually unhealthy and not fit. He trained up. Right. I get you. He's in the Air Force. He trained up for the once a year fitness test, yes, which is pretty standard across the military. They just kind of do those standards once a year. Yeah, like the Air Force one, I think might be the lowest, then Navy, and then Army, and that's off some old standards that I remember, like a couple of years old now. And also that's filtered through my bias, but that Army is the greatest, and then there's the rest of the forces that do some other shit that I don't really care about, float boats or fly planes or something. I don't know. But I know those standards that when I was in have degraded significantly. I know that for a fact. My niece joined up to the military, and she told me what her standards were to get in, and I was like, what? You have to do how many push-ups? That's like not even the beginning of a warm-up for push-ups. Like, I don't get it. And people are still failing. But this is where the standards are going. Lowering of standards within a military force is an indicator of the lowering of standards within a society. The reason I put out these ones is because I think it behooves us. We should know that our empire is collapsing. And like I've said before on previous SitReps, I believe that if people were in the collapse, like in the Bronze Age collapse or in the Roman Empire collapse, they probably weren't sitting there going, oh, we're collapsing, because it happens over a long time period. Things just progressively get worse and worse. But it would kind of help you to know that, like, oh yeah, times are going to get worse. It's not like, how it's been in the golden era. It's not like how it's been in the last 5 decades in the Western world. Things are going to get worse, and we're going to see these degradations. The main reason I want to point that out is that, as much as possible, I don't want to judge myself against the norm. I'm sorry if there's someone out there called Norm right now. I think there is, actually. I'm not picking on you. I'm talking about societal norms, as in normalization of data, where we go, okay, everyone's at here, i.e. BMI or something like that. Which I've seen things where people are talking about, well, we need to shift BMI now, because it's classically been, oh, what, you're 24 on your BMI? Well, you're overweight. 25, you're pushing obesity there. They're thinking about shifting that up now. Or some people are. They've proposed to shift it up. And I'm like, no, like, this is not a good idea. This is the boiling frog. We need to try and fight normalization, which is a really, really common thing that almost all humans do. We normalize our situations. Normalcy bias is what we usually call it in the security industry. This is something we've got to fight against. It's not good enough to go like, I'm doing all right compared to everyone else. No, I train, I prep, I do what I do against me, but the bad me. It's like bizarro Gads, the evil Gads, my evil twin. That's who I'm going to fight against. I'm not fighting against most of the other people, because, like, in The Walking Dead, they're instantly zombies. Like, these are people that get wiped out in the first 24 hours of a major event. I'm not like setting myself that standard. I'm setting myself a much higher standard. I'm setting myself the standard of, after 3 months after this huge event, who's the warlord? Who's taken over? Who's the Negan? That's who I'm battling against. That's who I'm preparing against in my head. And that's who we should sort of, like, that's a dramatization, obviously, of this thought process, but that's the way I sort of think about it. So when I'm looking at stuff like this, I'm like, I need to log that. I need to tell people about that. Air Force standards have gone down. You should know that, because societal standards have gone down. Our society is slipping. Whatever moral, physical, psychological standards you hold to, based on whatever system, I encourage people to hold on to them. And I don't have any, I try not to take any issue. I know a lot of people get wrapped around the axles about things like religion and stuff like that. I think, like, it's great. Whatever you have is good, because it's a standard. And some of these, standards have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So hold yourself to that. Hold yourself to that moral standard, not to what's happening right now, what you're seeing on your TV. Don't hold yourself to that standard. Okay, don't sit just above that standard, because you can sit above that standard and all of a sudden you're nothing. You are, like, worse than nothing. Hold yourself to a higher standard. Another way I often think about this is, I think about what my grandfather or great-grandfather would think if they looked at me. And quite often that's a pretty negative thing, but that's my personal, sort of mindset. That's what drives me, and I'm not saying that's right for everyone. But, I look at something and I go, oh man, I can't do that. And I think, I never met my paternal grandfather. I just heard a lot of stories about him. This dude was bare knuckle boxer. He got shot 3 times. He walked across the Nullarbor. Like, you can't hold yourself against that sort of standard. Can you? No, you should. That's what I'm talking about. If I came up against that dude, my grandfather, like, what would he think of me? Would he look at me and just go like, pathetic? So that's where I'm aiming. That's my high watermark. Hey brother, you watched The Last of Us? Yes, yes, I have watched The Last of Us. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I played the games. I was a big fan of the games too. In fact, I would say the games, for me, I love really good storytelling. I love religion and mythology for the same reason. I love the stories that we as humans tell each other, in how we transmit that information, in what's happening in a society, in an area, in a space, through the zeitgeist, through the common sort of collective unconscious. the stories give us what's going on there. And for me, I think our stories are getting worse and worse. That's one thing that I'm like, I watch so much stuff nowadays that I go like, this is just trash. Like, who wrote this? This isn't even like a compelling story. But Last of Us was one of those things where every now and then something comes out of nowhere, or I didn't see it coming, and I played this game and was like, whoa, I feel severely affected by this story. Like it got in there and it showed me the human condition from a different perspective. So yeah, I did like it. I did watch it. I thought the TV series hit so many great points too. It didn't just copy the game. It went out and it expanded upon the world quite well. But it also was extremely faithful to the game. So they kind of somehow got the best of both worlds there. All right. Phone looks like it's about to die. Have you seen it, Steve Garrington? And if you have, let me know what you think. If you hated it, if you loved it, let me know. Bit of a physical preparation number one, says Peter Rouse. I often say it's number two. Mental preparation is the most paramount thing, most important thing that we can do. Prepare yourself mentally, prepare yourself physically. I have read many stories of survival and non-survival where people have died when they've got the right equipment, they had the right training, they had the right experience, but they just died. And you look at it, you go, why? What happened there? The only other thing that I could think of in those particular cases is the will to live wasn't there. Something happened within them where their mentality wasn't right. So mental game first, get yourself sorted there. Make sure you know what it is that drives you. What is your will to live? What is your will to survive? And then work on the physical ability. No piece of equipment is going to compensate for any of them, no matter how much money you spend on it. So I know as preppers, and I'm guilty of this, more guilty than most people, love to throw some money at some good prepping gear, but always make sure that we're looking after the mental side, always make sure we're looking after the physical side as well. Steve says, I love it. Yes, I have seen it. Savage the Wild says, good storytelling has been replaced by a brave, diverse, and inclusive quota to meet. Correct. 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, 3 hours without shelter, 3 seconds without hope. That's a good one. 3 minutes without air going in and out of your lungs and blood pumping around your body. So emergency first aid, another good one to slide in there. And I usually say something around the lines of 3 seconds without situational awareness or ability to react. And that means different things to different people. But like in an emergency situation when things are going on, you need to be situationally aware. You need to be taking things in. But also for certain parts of the world, it's 3 seconds, and it's under 3 seconds to react to certain stimuli, threatening stimuli. But this is the first time I've heard that, Savage the Wild, and I really like that. 3 seconds without hope. That's awesome. I'm going to steal that one from you and use it. Can't have mind without the body and the body without the mind. Yeah, that's true. But like they are one and the same thing. But I think the mind, for me at least, drives the body. The body does drive the mind drives the body. I get myself in a good mental state, and that will allow me to then go and do a physical workout or something like that. But sometimes I've learned over years, if I'm not feeling too good up here, doing some of these run will actually make me feel good up here. So yeah, you're 100% right there, Peter. Try 1 week without food. It's doable. It's not fun, but it's doable. Are you seeing contrails whilst white streaks in the sky from aeroplanes in Australia like the Western United States is? Yes, we are. It's more in some areas than others, but we're definitely seeing them from aeroplanes in Australia. We see quite a bit here. All right. I've got some other stuff here. I'm just going to quickly go through this and then wrap things up. This is about the farmers. I was talking about this situation last time about Ukrainian grain. Ukrainian grain. Sounds like I'm doing some sort of like vocal warm-ups before my I'm Rum Burgundy. Ukrainian grain. Ukrainian grain flooding the market into Europe in not a good way. So they took the levies, they took the tax off Ukraine to like help out those poor farmers, and of course, then it made it much cheaper than what local farmers within the rest of Europe could make, and it's taking money and food out of their mouths. So Bulgaria, Romania, and Poland, I think, are up in arms. There's a number of protests that are going on within the major cities and also at the borders. There was some talk about blockades at borders as well to try and stop coming in. And now we've had Hungary actually break ranks. So this one's being tracked by my main source on Instagram, who sent me through this information, which is really good stuff. This person is actually in this area, so they've got kind of like a really good viz on what's happening here. Hungary breaks ranks to protect farmers. Hungary announced the strengthening of measures to control the import of grain coming from Ukraine, and also takes the initiative to resume duties and quantitative restrictions on the imports of Ukrainian grain and oilseeds. Shouldn't be eating this stuff anyway, guys. Grains, oilseeds, it's bad. Anyway, that aside, Hungarian Minister of Agriculture Istvan Nagy said that this step is necessary to protect the interests of European farmers who suffer losses as a result of supplies of Ukrainian agricultural products to local markets at dumping prices. So, you can see, again, this is like one of those things that just does my head in. It's kind of like this quasi-communist mentality of like, yes, we can like fix this and we can help this and we can put restrictions here and take restrictions off and do this and we'll help these people out. And oh shit, it just fucked everything. How did we not see this happening? How did we not see this coming? It's like, oh, I don't know. Could you maybe look back in the last 70 years of history and see that it didn't work any single time that people tried, and maybe take your cue from that? No? Okay. Of course not. So anyway, like I always like to point out these ones too, the disunited nations, the European Union. It's not the homogenized whole that we think it is, and quite often it's quite fractious, and Hungary is particularly fractious within this part of the world, within Europe. So there you have it. A bit of pushback against that, and putting it back on a level playing field, I guess, but unintended consequences. At the end of the day, this means less food for more people. Both on the, let me put it this way, just from the European perspective, they allow Ukrainian grain and oilseeds to come in cheap, which means that the local producers don't make money, which means they go broke, which means they go bust and no longer produce that stuff, which means that now we're solely reliant on Ukraine. If something happens again, like the war escalates, that doesn't come in, now Europeans are going hungry, or more likely their food price is skyrocketing as they have to import it from the US or somewhere. But again, the blind spot here, Europeans going hungry equals directly hundreds of millions of African people starving to death. That's the big hole here. That's the big problem. And I love that, it's taking a protest of farmers who are getting hit in the bottom line, like they're hurting monetarily, for this issue to actually start to be looked at. And it's still nothing in this news really about what's happening in Africa right now. But yeah, that's what's happening. Peter Rouse says, war on food. The Ukraine grain was meant to go to third world countries, but really was really was to crash the grain market, which is exactly what it's doing right now. Should be going to Africa, should be going to other third world countries, should be going to the Middle East, isn't. All right, that's enough doom and gloom for today. Let's wrap it up there, gang. Thank you very much for joining me and being very interactive today. I really appreciate it. I hope you're all well wherever you are in the world. Still smiling, still prepping. Things are still all right in my neck of the woods. Interestingly, I want to hear from Americans. Shoot me through a message if you're from the United States. Tell me what the temperature is there. I'm not talking about the Fahrenheit temperature. Like, what's the mood? What's the feel of the people on the ground there? I just noticed this morning I turned on YouTube and my the American prepper channels, of which there are many, seem to be slanted towards, in the last 2 days, a lot of nuclear war sort of stuff. So I don't know what's happening in the US at the moment. Like, if you guys got a bit of fear bug going around about nukes being dropped or whatever, but let me know. Let me know what's happening there. All right, that's it for today. Thank you very much. Yeah, hit the like, subscribe thing if you want. Share the good word. And I'm going to get some sleep because I didn't get much last night. Hope you're doing well. Keep growing food. Keep a smile on your face. Keep prepping. Get those numbers up. And I will see you next time. Semper Paratus.